Right, here we go with episode 2. At the end of episode 1, we had a nicely set up GarageBand project, easy to find our way around, all of our tracks are imported. We can now start to actually replace some of the parts. Now the easiest one to start with, and the one that I always tend to start with, is the drums. Now we've actually got 2 different drum/percussion parts, so I'm going to put them together. That's the first thing I'm going to do. So I'm going to drag the percussion up so it's under the electronic drums, so they're together. These 2 parts fit together really nicely and create something really quite interesting on their own. Okay, so for the moment at least, we're not going to touch the percussion track. We're going to leave that one in because that one's got some quite interesting effects on it. It's quite complex, it's quite advanced. Okay, so we're going to leave that one alone. But the electronic drums is really quite simple. Okay, now we're going to replace that, and we're going to replace it in layers. We're not going to put all of those parts down immediately. We're going to put different sections of the kit down individually. So the drums start at bar 13. So on my ruler up here, I'm going to select bar 13, and that's going to be our starting point. There's no point in recording in here because this is just empty sound. So we may as well wait. So we're going to need 2 things. Firstly, we're going to need a new track. And secondly, we're going to need a MIDI keyboard to play in. So I'm going to click on electronic drums, then I'm going to right click the track header, and I'm going to go new software instrument track. Okay, a software instrument is something which is controlled by a MIDI keyboard. So here we go, picture in picture, this is the MIDI keyboard. You should be familiar with these by now. Now at the moment this is set up for classic electric piano. Okay. Now we don't want a classic electric piano, we want a drum kit. So we need to access the library. Right, so in order to do that, I'm going to press the Y key. It was open earlier in episode 1 and I told you to close it, but now that we need it, there we go. Now I've already had a look through and I've found this effect called Beat Machine, which works quite nicely. Right, now what that does is it turns every key of the MIDI keyboard into part of the drum kit. Okay. So, oh, sorry about that one. There are some good sounds on there that will work quite nicely. But, very importantly, we need to transpose our... Oh, excuse me. We need to transpose our keyboard. Okay, because at the moment we haven't got the right part of the keyboard for the sounds that we want. So we need to make it an octave lower. So I'm going to press the down button under octave. And you can see that lights up green. Okay, and what that means is that this key here, the very bottom one, has now become our kick drum, and that is actually what we're going to do first. So I'm going to relabel this Beat Machine. I'm going to call it kick drum. Right, now I've got it on solo. Okay, if I didn't have it on solo, or I didn't have everything else on, it wouldn't make any sound. Look. Okay, but as soon as I hit the solo, it will make sound. Right, you don't have to use the solo if you want. It will work fine with everything else on, but just be aware that if you currently play it or record it, you're going to hear the whole song. You might want to record with the whole song, or you might want to record with just the drum tracks. I'm going to record with just the drum tracks to try and make it nice and clear. So I've got my solo tool on both of those. It's a good opportunity to talk about using the solo tool as well. Demonstrate to your examiner that you understand what the solo tool is. So, what does the bass drum do? Well, it's really quite simple. Okay, if you ignore that ticking sound, all we've got is this. Okay, now you might decide that you want to use a different sound. You might not like the kick drum sound that I've chosen. There are loads of different sounds for you to choose from. You don't have to copy me exactly. Okay, so let's do our first bit of recording. Just need this key. I'm going to go boom, 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 boom. Nice and in time with the original. To record, all you have to do is either press this record button or hit R. And I would get in the habit of using R because it's much faster than going up and clicking on the record button all the time. We've got the count-in set up. That was on automatically. I haven't changed anything there. So what it's going to do is before you start recording, it's going to give you 4 beats of counting on the metronome, which is really useful so you know when to start. Here we go. There's a gap here. Okay, and that's all that little section that we are going to record. Okay, that's all that we're going to do. Now, what I would do at this point is I would take a screenshot. Okay, so I would go same keys as we used before. Windows Shift 3. And I've still got my presentation open. Okay, this is where things are starting to get interesting. So I'm going to go screenshot 4. Keep it nice and neat. Here I am starting to replace the commercial tracks with my own. Repaste, apparently. I have decided to start the drum tracks, and I am going to play a kick drum in using a MIDI keyboard. Now, for an extra hit here of really showing that you know what you're talking about, MIDI stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface. It is a set of digital instructions that are produced by a MIDI controller, such as a MIDI keyboard. These can then be read and played back by the DAW, the digital audio workstation. Okay, so just going a little further. Okay, and the reason I'm going to do that is because I'm going to develop this kick part just a tiny bit. If we listen to them again, sounds all right, but they're not perfectly in time. You can hear the second pair. I think I played one a little bit early. Okay, that's slightly out of time. One of the reasons why we spent so long syncing up the click track is because the sequencer has some fantastic tools that can lock things onto the timing grid and lock things onto the beat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I've got that track selected. I'm going to press E to open the editor. Okay, now the editor, this is the MIDI information, right? So there's one of the bass drums, there's the second one. You can see they're in pairs. That's what we have recorded. And I was right, the second pair is just a little bit early. Right, now I could grab hold of it and I could put it on that line, which is the beat, right? I could, or I could click anywhere in the editor, select all with Windows A, and click this little Q button over here, which stands for quantize. Did you see how they all moved? Okay, they're now perfectly in time. Gap here. Now, if you record through that gap, it doesn't matter, because actually in the editor you can also do all kinds of extra things. Like if you want to take one out, just click on it and press delete. Right, I'm going to want to do that. But let's say we had these in here. Okay, let's say we'd recorded straight through the gap. Okay, it would be really easy at this point to just click in and take them out. Okay, that's one of the wonderful things about MIDI. So at this point, I'm going to take another screenshot. Windows Shift 3. Okay, all the time we're collecting really good evidence to show that we know what we're talking about. Screenshot 5. And we're already starting to get into some advanced sequencing technique, which is what you want. My recording of the kick drum was okay, but it was a little out of time sometimes. Because I am using MIDI and because I synced up the click track earlier, I can now use the editor to make my track better. In screenshot 5, you can see that I have quantized all of the kick drum notes onto the timing grid. If I wanted to, I could also remove extra notes or change the length, pitch, or even velocity of the notes. The velocity is the fancy name for how hard they were hit. Okay, so you can see that the velocity, I hit the key with 93. I think it's out of 127. Yes, it is. Okay, I hit it with 93 out of 127. Whereas the next one, I hit with 102. So we've got a little bit of disparity. Now with a drum kit, it doesn't matter so much. But when you're playing a keyboard, say, it's really important that you get a nice evenness across. So if you wanted to, you can make them all super, super heavy. You could whack them all up to 127. Okay, then they'll really, really stick out. Okay, so there you go. So that's what velocity is there, and you can mention that. All right, okay, so we've now got a kick drum from bar 13 to bar 29. Okay, so the next job is to put in what I call the subtle ticking. Right, the subtle ticking, that happens quite a lot on its own. It's a little bit annoying, but when it goes into the song, it really quite nicely adds to the texture. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate our kick drum track by right-clicking on it, new track with duplicate settings. I'm going to change this to subtle ticking. Okay, now I've already looked on the keyboard. Just going to remind myself. Yes, okay, this C key here, right in the middle of the keyboard, again, octave down is on. Okay, this one right here will be really useful for that, okay? But we're not actually going to use the keyboard. We're going to use an extra technique, okay? And the technique we're going to use is called the pencil tool. Now, you can see when I'm pressing this, on the editor, this note that says C2 on it is, there's a little black dot appearing on it. That tells me that that is the key that I'm going to use. So, what I'm going to do is bar 13, right, we know we're in the right place, and C2, so I need to find that one, it's here. Okay, I'm going to use something called the pencil tool, which is where I can draw notes straight in, okay? And I'm going to hold down the Windows key, and it turns into a little pencil, right? I'm going to click. And I'm going to click on every line up until the end of this region, which is the proper name for the green area. Okay, going to click on everyone. Let's listen to that. That works, doesn't it? Okay, we might turn it down a little bit later so it's a little bit more subtle later. Okay, but two more jobs that we need to do with this. The first one is we're going to take out the first one and we're going to take out the last one so that they match exactly what the original did. Okay, so we've got our first beats worth, our first bars worth. Right, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take a screenshot. Screenshot 6. there is a subtle ticking noise on the track, and I wanted to replicate this. I searched on the MIDI keyboard until I found a suitable sound, but as this part is very fast, I am going to use the pencil tool to insert it rather than playing it in. To do this, I open the editor, E, and then I held down Command, which is the proper name for the Windows key, while clicking to add notes. I added one to each part of the timing grid, and I also used my editing skills to remove some that were not in the original. To do this, I clicked onto it and then pressed backspace. Delete. Okay, now another step with this one, we've only got 1 bar's worth. Okay, it stops. So we're going to use the loop tool, right? I'm going to click on the top right-hand corner of the region, and you can see that I've got a little circular arrow there. If I click down here, it just stretches empty space, okay, if we wanted to extend the region that way. But what we want is we want to loop it. So I'm going to go up here, I'm going to drag it out, right, to the whole length of that. Going to put that snare in a minute. Now we've got a problem because we've got the ticking going through the silence. Okay, we don't want that. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to drag it back again, work out where the end point would be. I think it's here. Okay, we're actually going to need to change this. Okay, so where is that? That's bar 20. Da, 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 da. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Da, 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 da. I think that's 7. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing as I did before. We're in the same place. Going to pencil tool it. I'm going to click. Was that 7? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. Look at that. There we go. 7 straight in. I missed the first one out again. Okay, again, if you wanted to put it in and then take it out, that's fine. Okay, so we've now got that in there, and the beauty about sequencing is I can copy this, right, by right-clicking, copy, put the playhead on 21, paste. There it is. And I think it goes all the way to the end. There we go, let's check this out. Now again, it needs turning down a bit later. Oh, it actually carries on a bit longer. How long does it go for? We may as well leave it in. Now we only need a minute of this track. Okay, it never actually stops throughout any of that, so let's put it all the way up to there. Okay, now that is great sequencing technique. It's quite simple, but it's really, really good sequencing technique. So what do I need to do? I need to screenshot. There we go. What are you up to now? Screenshot 7. Okay, screenshot 7, take that out. Here I took the inputting and editing a step further, and I used a mixture of different techniques. First of all, in fact, hang on, what did I do first? So what did we have in the last screenshot? I think it was just the first bar, wasn't it? Yeah, absolutely. So although we did it last, let's say we did it first. First of all, I used the loop tool to extend what I had inputted in the last part. But the song didn't use, or doesn't use, a perfect loop. As a result, I had to add some different sections, and I also used copy and paste to save having to put similar sections in again. There we go. Really, really good sequencing technique all the way through that. Okay, so crucial point that's missing at the moment is the snare. Right, now it doesn't start at bar 13 if I remember rightly. Just going to turn off my tracks. Not there yet. Starts at 17. Okay, now there's an extra thing on the start of the bar, but we're interested in the one that goes dum, dum, cha, that one, the cha. Okay, that's quite an aggressive snare sound. So I'm going to go duplicate track. All right, it's off at the moment. Let's turn it back on. Okay, we said bar 17. And this one here, I'm just going to check my keyboard camera is still running. Yes, it is. Okay, this key here, again, octave down. That's a nice aggressive snare drum. We're going to use that one. Okay, this one's very straightforward. So here we go. Gap. I could pencil this, but I'm here. Okay, I could have penciled that. But as I was already doing it, I thought it made most sense to play it in. So, what do I need to do? I need to quantize it. Click Q. Now, for one of these, I was talking to you, and as a result, I think I've probably put it so far off beat that it's going to have snapped onto the wrong beat. Let's have a listen. There we go. So that one, I played it so far behind that it actually snapped onto the wrong beat. This is one of those times where we need to be careful with quantization. We can put that in our write-up in just a minute. Just check the others. Okay, so there we go. Really, really good sequencing technique. As a result, screenshot it, and we can talk about the error that we made and how we fixed it. One of your assessment criteria talks about attention to detail. Okay, attention to detail is really, really important when you are sequencing. Well, when you're doing anything, in fact, but particularly when you are sequencing. So screenshot 8. Okay, I needed to add the snare, so I found the appropriate sound on the MIDI keyboard. and played it in. I quantized the track again, but I noticed, it's quite handy that I made an error, but I noticed an error with the quantization. This is a good example of the limitations of the software. Is that mentioned in your assignment brief, ladies and gentlemen? Yes, it is. So it's really good to talk about it. This is a good example of limitations of the software because I played the snare so far out of time that it snapped or jumped to the wrong place. It is always worth checking things like this for computer/human error. Okay, there we go. Fantastic. Really, really nice sequencing technique. We've only got one more track to do. Okay, so I'm going to again duplicate. In fact, let's change the name of this one. Should have done that before I screenshotted, really. Never mind. What's this? I don't know what to call this one. We're just going to do the two notes which happen. Let's call it two notes. So here, listen to the original. In the gap. Okay, before we come back in again. Bomb. Yep, okay, just before the end of here. Okay, those two, that's what we need. I clapped on those two. So we need a suitable sound. And I have already looked through for this. And I'm going for this note up here. Now again, you use a different sound if you want. Search through. You could be on a completely different patch. It doesn't matter. But I think that works quite nicely. So all I'm going to do is just record that one bar. It's bar 20. Let's listen to it again. 2, 3, 4. Tick, tick. Okay, that's all it is. Two notes. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, again, quantize. You might want to edit them in some way. You might want to, in fact, why not? Let's turn up velocity. Make sure that they're as loud as they can be. There we go. And we've now got pretty much a full version of the drum beat. You might say, so it doesn't sound exactly like the original. No, it doesn't. But it sounds good enough. It certainly works. And it demonstrates that you understand what the sequencer is all about. There's our snare. Certainly in time. Sounds professional. Here's the ticks. Now, I actually don't like that, okay? I don't like those sounds. I don't think that works. Ah, that's better, okay? I prefer that. So I'm going to change the sound, not by reprogramming, but by dragging. Again, excuse the whooshing noise. Okay, I prefer this, I think. Oh, it's actually the same sound we used before. Yeah, so you might be... Is there a different one? Oh, yes! That works nicely, doesn't it? Let's go with that. Okay, give us another opportunity to talk about good technique. Yes, much better. Much better. What do I need? Need a screenshot, of course, to talk about everything that I've just done. So, where are we up to? Screenshot 9. Okay, we're not a very long way into the project. We've got loads and loads of really good evidence. Why did that appear there? Don't know. Center on page, horizontally. Screenshot 9. There was one last part that I needed or wanted to include, and that's the two spare notes at the end of the silence in bar, what was it? Where is the silence? In bar 20, wasn't it? Be specific. I played these in using the MIDI keyboard, having found a sound that I thought, typing's gone out the window, and I thought I liked, and then quantized it. However, when I listened back, I didn't like the sound that I had chosen. As a result, I used the editor, which again I'll say E, I used the editor to drag the pitch of the note down to one that was more suitable. You might say to me, that wasn't pitch. Well, it was pitch, because up and down on the keyboard, okay, if it was a melodic instrument, would be pitch. So that is exactly what we're after. Okay, now is that enough in terms of replacing? It is enough. Yes, absolutely. There's some really, really excellent sequencing technique in there. If you do all of that and show that attention level to detail, you are up there with distinction, no problem at all. If you want to go further, if you want to replace, no, there are more sounds in there that I haven't touched. There are, but you know what I've done is great. But if you want to go further, you can. Now, if I take out the original track, let's take off this solo tool. If I take out the original track up until that point, and I leave our track in, listen to this.
East side of the city where the sun don't set. And every day you know that we ride through the back streets of a blue Corvette.
It all fits.
Baby, you know I just wanna leave tonight. We can go anywhere we want. Drive down to the coast, jump in the sea. Just take my hand and come with me, yeah. We can do anything if we put our minds to it.
Okay, it works. So you've got more than enough evidence there. I just turned some things down while it was playing. Feel free to do that if you want. Leave the master fader alone though. Try and do it from over here. We're going to talk a lot more about balancing later. So there we go. That is the drums. That's the minimum that you need to do. If you want to do more, you absolutely can. I will see you in the next episode.